Hello. Let's talk religion. Before we start any kind of discussion on this channel, we should probably get rid of the elephant in the room. If we're going to talk about religion, then we should probably all agree on how to define the word itself, right? Well, turns out that's a very difficult thing to do. By the end of this video, you might just be more confused than you were going in, which I guess in a way defeats the purpose, really, but anyway. I should point out that there's a great video on this very subject over on the Religion for Breakfast channel, and it's actually really good. So after you watch this one, you should go and give him some love as well. I'll leave a link in the description. Okay, so in the academic study of religions, we paradoxically use the word religion with great caution. One of the first things we learn when we study religion is that there is no official definition for the word. And you can obnoxiously type in some definition that you've heard or say that, oh, religion is opium for the masses. But the fact remains that there's no official definition for the word. But that doesn't mean that people haven't tried, however. For example, Edward B. Taylor, who is considered one of the founders of anthropology, defined religion as belief in supernatural beings. And this is, of course, a rather narrow and specific definition for the word that also leaves out a lot of what we would call religion today. Another example is by Clifford Geertz, who has a much more broad definition for the word. He writes that religion is a system of symbols which acts to establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations in men by formulating conceptions of a general order of existence and clothing these conceptions with such an aura of factuality that the moods and motivations seems uniquely realistic. Now these obviously are two very different ideas about what religion is, and who's to say that one is more right or wrong than the other? Even if these two individuals are greatly admired and followed by modern anthropologists, everyone still creates their own image and idea of what religion is. In a lot of ways, we create our own field, so to say. Consider this painting, for example. Is this religion or is it art? If your answer is that it's both, then which part of it is religion and which part of it is art? Can you divide it up into these two categories? It kind of blends together, doesn't it? I think we would all agree that Christianity is a religion, right? But is Scientology a religion? Is Jediism a religion? Is football a religion even? It all depends on how you define the word religion itself. Many scholars have tried to get to the bottom of the question of religion, especially in the last century or so, and there are a lot of conflicting opinions about what sort of the underlying causes of it are. For example, Emil Durkheim is one of the champions of a sociological explanation for religion, and he argues that the idea of society is the soul of religion. To him, religion is a set of practices and symbols that work mainly towards social cohesion. Much like a nation's flag, religion becomes a symbol for a certain group of people and a kind of uniting principle. He studied Australian tribes and so-called simple peoples, basically people that live like we would imagine people lived thousands of years ago, and he studied totem culture and totem religion in these tribal cultures. In these studies, he shows that different totems represent different tribes or different groups, and is also worshipped by those same groups. By extension, they are worshipping themselves, or more specifically, the tribe to which they belong. And Durkheim extends this idea to other religions and behavior outside religion as well. So for example, if you have a nation like the US, there are certain symbols that come to mind, like the flag with the stars, a hamburger maybe, or a bald eagle. And now the bald eagle, for instance, becomes a symbol for the US and for American patriotism. Religions, to Durkheim, works the same way, except it is the god or the deity or whatever it is that becomes that uniting and symbolic principle that the group can sort of unite under. Another well-known theory is a more psychological perspective by people like Sigmund Freud, who argued that religion is a faulty sense of security for people, much like a teddy bear for a child, and that we should get rid of that teddy bear. He even compares religion to certain mental illnesses and argues that, quote, religion is comparable to childhood neurosis. He didn't like religion very much. These are just a few examples of the ideas and theories on the origin and explanation for religion. But there's a problem. All of these individual scholars, academics, have one thing in common, and that is that they are all Western scholars, working primarily from a European or American framework about things like what even religion means. And this is very problematic. In fact, the very term religion as we know it was probably conceived of in this particular region, Europe and America, and only in the last few centuries or so. Let me explain. If I were to ask you what the most central aspect of religion is, the core principle throughout religion, chances are you would answer that it deals with faith or some kind of belief or belief system. And if this is your answer, then you're probably from a Western Protestant Christian culture. In fact, the idea of religion as primarily faith is a very Protestant idea. And if you were to ask a Hindu or a Muslim from India the same question, chances are they would give you a lot different answers. Perhaps they say religion is about a practice or certain behavior or family even. There's a very good example for this phenomenon, and one that my old teacher used to bring up all the time. So I'm from Sweden, right? And we like to consider ourselves sort of secularized or not very religious. In his example, he always brings up that in a lot of cases when people come from other parts of the world to Sweden, they are amazed to find out how religious we are. And now you may be confused and ask, well, how are we religious? Well, according to them, we take care of the elderly, we treat each other well, we have a good welfare system, these kinds of things, which shows that to them, religion is completely different, their definition, than what some of ours may be. We think about belief in a God, we think about going to church, they think about welfare and taking care of the elderly. These are completely different ideas about what being religious means. In fact, many argue that religion as we understand it in the West is very much based on Christianity and the templates that Christianity contains. Because when the Christian empires conquered the world, they often took very complex local systems and traditions and placed the label of religion on them. You know, that thing that Christianity is, only not as good. As an example of this, you can just look at the education about religion in Europe and the textbooks that are given to the students. In them, all religions are often divided into three categories, according to a scholar who uses these a lot of the time. And these three categories are the man, the text, and the faith. Sound familiar? Well, this is because this is a Christian template. There is Jesus, the man, the Bible, the text, and the Christian faith, the Christian theology that are at the core of Christianity. The problem arrives when you try to forcibly apply these categories to other religions as if they were the same, when they are clearly not the same. Even a closely related religion like Islam, when you put these categories, it is the man, which becomes Muhammad, the text, the Quran, and the Muslim faith, the Muslim theology. But the Quran is not just the Muslim Bible. The Quran has a much different role and position within Islam than the Bible has in Christianity. And Muhammad has a much different role in Islam than Jesus has in Christianity. So to say that things like, well, the Quran equals the Muslim Bible is very problematic, and that undermines the complexity and difference of all these traditions that we're trying to educate and study. To further destroy an idea of what religion is to talk about the apparent difference between religion and the rest of society. So let me explain. In the West today, we have certain categories, certain pockets of our lives. So there's politics, there is sports, there is culture, and there's religion. And all these occupy their own parts of our lives. Even if they blend together sometimes. But again, this is a very modern and Western perspective on it. This has not always been the case, and in a lot of parts of the world it still isn't the case. Previously in history, and indeed in parts of the world still today, all these categories tended to blend together. It was all just part of life. Religion didn't have its own place that you could choose to approach or ignore. It was just there, infinitely fused into all aspects of life and of society. But this also means that our societies are a lot more religious or affected by religion than we tend to believe. Again, in Sweden, we consider ourselves to be very secular. We have separated church and state, for example, and so on. But we don't realize how Christian we really are. Everything about our culture just fumes with Christianity. Our flag has a cross on it. We have our weekends on Sundays and Saturdays. We tend to believe that religion is primarily about faith or belief. And our entire moral compass is based on Christianity. Every part of our society is in one way or another, at least partly, influenced by the Christian tradition. To elaborate, one of the most famous scholars of religion, Talal Assad, argues that there can be no distinction between culture and religion. In a famous essay called The Construction of Religion as an Anthropological Category, he argues that religion as a phenomenon separated from politics, law, and science have emerged from a unique Western post-Reformation history. In other words, religion cannot be separated from culture or any of the other categories mentioned above, as this is a construct by the West and made to benefit the Western or Christian worldview. While not everyone agrees with Assad, and certainly I think there is some value in using the word religion, his ideas certainly point to the fact that these lines between a lot of these subjects are often very fuzzy and really undefined. Of course, our discipline is called comparative religion after all, so the word obviously means something. You can even argue that all religions around the world have something in common that makes them religions, but this is also a very dangerous path filled with snakes and sharks and killer whales that will kill you and play with your dead body. It is, after all, a word that exists for a reason, and it kind of means something. I mean, if I say the word religion, most of you know at least somewhat what I'm talking about. And to sit here and try to define words until they no longer mean anything is to me just counterproductive. And I argue that we should use this word both in conversation and as an academic concept, but we should do so with great caution and have all these things that I've talked about in mind. It is useful as an analytical tool, but it's also a very dangerous term. And it tries to encompass a whole lot. I would argue that this is religion, this is religion, this is religion, this is religion as well, but also this, and this. Religions as we understand them exists all around the world and in countless different forms. They can serve as justification for terrible things, but also of wonderful and beautiful things. If we accept a broad definition of religion, it encompasses an almost endless number of things. But that's also what makes it so interesting. I'll see you next time.